Hello, FloodGate family. Welcome to our Leadership Live series. And I am excited to have a great leader, a good guy, Tim Panciera. He's the VP of Sales and Global Marketing. But Tim, I'm not going to do a good job of telling your story. I'd rather you. So for those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, Tim.
Thanks, Joe. Sure. Well, a little background for me. I hail from the New England area. I live in the Boston area, which is also where I started my medical device career. Hard to believe that was 18 years ago that I entered the medical device space. But just a little background on that, I think just maybe will frame where I'm at today. I started with a cardiothoracic distributor that had several lines. And so of those lines, there were some pretty large notables like Boston Scientific and Terumo. So I got exposure to what those big companies were doing and what that looked like when you had a lot of a marketing machine. And I was also exposed to some of those tiger by the tail technologies as well. A couple of them.
Contrast.
Somanetics was one that was cerebral pulse oximetry. That one was eventually picked up by Covidien. LiDCO, lithium dilution cardiac output, was another one that was picked up by Masimo. So I think the fun part for me, Joe, is like when you see what, either the startups or the big companies, but when you have exciting technology, what that looks like. And an example of just getting into Boston Children's and seeing an open heart surgery on a neonate is something that in an early stage in your career will stick with you forever, and it makes you really just appreciate those technologies.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Yeah, and Laborie has really done some exciting things recently. A lot of change, a lot of momentum happening there. So tell us a little bit about what's going on there first.
Yeah, sure. Well, now I'm at Laborie, and as you mentioned, I have the opportunity to be able to lead the commercial team for the U.S. in the urology space. And I think for those who might know Laborie, we've always been known as a urology-focused company, but we are certainly more than that. We've got several business units. We've got an OB business unit. We've got a GI business unit, and also working in conjunction with my urology team. And I think that, again, for those who might know Laborie's portfolio, we've been very, very strong in the diagnostic side of the patient care continuum. And so I think a lot of people and urologists would say that they know us for our urodynamics and the prowess that we have there in terms of capital and disposable. But we certainly do have an augmenting and continually augmenting our therapeutic side. So if a patient shows up with lower urinary tract symptoms, we want to be able to be the company that not only helps on the front end of the diagnostics or advanced diagnostic stage, but be able to also give the tools to those clinicians to be able to then intervene and be able to provide beyond just behavioral and pharmacologic therapeutic interventions to be able to advance and improve that quality of life.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, hey, I know technology matters, but really the thing that I think matters most, and especially in med device, is great leadership, right? So you've done a great job leading a lot of people. So I'd love to understand from you, what do you think it takes and what attributes are necessary to be a good leader in this space? And guys, before he answers, if you have questions as Tim's talking, we've got a really cool thing. You just comment below in this LinkedIn Live event, and we'll pull it up at the end of this, and that way you could pick Tim's brain. So if anything he's saying, please post it on there. We'll pull it up and discuss as many of those we have time for. So Tim, I'll turn it back to you on that question as I threw it to you.
Sure. Okay. Well, thanks, Joe. I mean, I don't know that's unique just to medical device, but in this post-pandemic recovery world that we're all in, I think more than ever, not only do you need a vision and a game plan, but we all know what happens when visions and game plans change, and you need to be adaptable. And so I think, there's a lot of articles that are out there from Harvard Business Review and others that would talk about right now, I think with leadership, to be able to have a tone of empathy, to be able to have active listening and understand the voice of your customer as well as those of your employees, but also to have really a neutral mindset. I mean, that's the other part of this, I think, that really in sales or any kind of business right now that could be going through some turbulence, just to be able to have that even-keeled approach, to be able to understand that you navigate the highs and the lows with that neutral mindset, and to be able to have, I think, also an inviting environment where you've got people who are willing to feel vulnerable, that you have a trust and open communication so that people can feel like what we're doing is we're collaborating together. You want to build an environment where you've got some of the smartest people in the room who are around you, so that in that way, collectively, we can all make decisions that's best for the business. It's not just one person. It's not about hierarchy. It's about, I think, really being able to have that corporate culture that really allows for that collaborative spirit.
Yeah, that is awesome. When you have people that want to understand that vision, I call it the commander's intent, right? Because no plan survives first contact, so they got to know. but then are open enough to go, hey, something's wrong. Here's my idea. Here's what's going on. I mean, if you don't have that culture,
Yep.
you don't hear what you need, and you end up like the emperor with no clothes, right? To make those changes. So
That's great.
fully agree. Now, I know I have as a leader had a couple of the tough, I call them lessons, that I've learned the hard way as leading. Is there a couple lessons that you could share with this group that they can learn, and maybe not the hard way from those that you can impart on?
Sure. Well, unfortunately, I've got many of them. We could probably do an entire conversation on those. And I guess, fortunately or unfortunately, I've also been exposed to some pretty poor, maybe lessons in leadership that have happened from others that I've been able to learn from. So I think that that's also harboring, one of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, and The Obstacle is the Way. It's whether you're observing someone else doing it or you have your own obstacles. I think that you have a chance to be able to learn from that. So to your question, let's see, getting back when I first got into management, I started off, so I was promoted from within. So I had gone from a region where I was a colleague to everybody. We were friends, we were buddies. We were all kind of in the same camp. And then now when you get promoted, it's, this is now a little bit different. The dynamic has shifted. And so, one of the trappings that I had was, in my strength finders, I'm a winning others over a woo. And so I do gravitate towards wanting to make connections with people.
Same here.
All right. I like it. But I think with the downfall with that is it's not just about do people like you and do you get along with them, is you have to be a leader. You have to be able to give direct, open feedback. And when it's good, that's fun. But when it's not so great or when things are slipping, you can't just make an exception that, Joe is this great rep and I know he delivers the numbers, so it's okay he doesn't submit the weekly report or doesn't do the expenses in time. Those are things you can't let slide. And I think having some of those relationships beforehand was a challenge. So I would just remember that it is absolutely a luxury to be able to develop friendships and personal rapport with people. But when the time comes, you need to have a culture of accountability and direct feedback that you can still have those tough conversations. And it may even in some cases not end that well, and it might compromise your friendship. But those who are really truly in it for the right reasons for them and for you, they'll respond to that. And I think those are the ones that stand the test of time versus the ones that might have been more superficial.
Yeah, no, it is one of the hardest things, and it's one of the hardest transitions, and it happens to a lot of leaders because that's where you get promoted, right? The region you're not moving across the country, so you have peers and colleagues, and learning that transition, how to do it correctly, right, and not do too much. That's a great example, and I'm sure there's a lot of people love to pick your brain and might be going through the same thing right now that will have some questions on that. But one of the things, when you have that new region or you have that group, you have those high performers, what's the way to really develop, that 80-20 rule, that 20% that's going to bring me to 80% of the business? How do you develop those? How do you treat them?
Well, I think first and foremost, it's development from maybe a career progression standpoint would require them to, are they interested in doing that? And so do they want to? Is that what they want? What are their motivations? And again, it doesn't have to be just career progression. It could be just developing them to be the best version of the role that they're in today too. So I think that, both are applicable, but you need to just make sure that you understand what are their motivations. And I think we often as salespeople get categorized as we're competitive and we're money driven. And that might not be incorrect for the masses, but there's also those, what are you in this for? What really motivates you and gets you excited about getting up every morning and going to execute? And so I think just understanding that and really being able to ask the questions during your one-on-ones of really what people want to go do. And then as they show that they've got interest in maybe, being the best version of the role they're in, or if they would like to be able to expand their career, you offer them opportunities to be able to audition for that. You challenge them with some different tasks or some opportunities to be able to showcase that. And you have to show them a little bit of the ropes of here's the expectation and here's how we want to go do this, give them the blueprints, but then allow them to go do it. And if they fail, again, another podcast I love is Jacob Brown, Fail Forward. That give them an environment where we can do this safely, where it's us and it's conducive to giving feedback on here's what went well, here's what did not go well, so that no matter what, we're going to continue to get better and we're going to learn from this. And so I think it's again harboring that environment of what are you after, what motivates you, let's get you auditioning to be able to do some of these things. And former chief sales officers used to always say that the best way to get a promotion is if you're already doing that job. So if you can showcase those skill sets that you're already executing, then it's a no-brainer when you're looking for cross-departmental support to be able to support someone to get that next.
Yeah, no, I think that's a phenomenal point. is taking the time and really understand first what they want, you know, and, you know, like you know, helping them achieve that once you know where they need to be, right? And you said something interesting that I talked to. One of my old leaders used to say, the great lead that, you know, high performers, they love a big challenge, right? And so finding what they want, but then giving them that challenge and allowing them to fail forward, as I love that saying, is impactful. So some tremendous nuggets there. You know, obviously finding the right people that you can develop, right? And then evaluating new talent, right? To determine, okay, where are they? What track do they want? And, you know, how do I attract them into the business to find them? What's, you know, give us a few tips of what's been successful for you.
Well, I think if the organization has a pretty good career progression blueprint as well, where you can start from saying entry level into the organization, and here's the opportunities that you have to be able to build from there, then that always helps. I think that really at Laborie, we've had the opportunity, whether it's on my leadership team or it's the TM ranks, we've been able to get people who've walked in the door and then give them that stair step for how to get to that next level. But just like a good Nick Saban football team, you know, if you have a starter that goes down, you want to have a good bench. And if you're fortunate enough to be able to have that internally, that you've built that out and you've got some people that you know are either hypos or that you've got in succession planning, it's great when you've got that right inside your walls. But if it's not, I think still that bench mentality applies, is understanding, you know, who those different players are in the market. Would they potentially have the opportunity if a position opened up to come in? But the reality is that we don't always have a bench. We can't always just lean on, you know, there's 6 or 7 people that are always constantly waiting to come on in. So I think there's probably a paradigm shift that I've started to embrace, and I've seen it more over the years too, where there might be this school of thought that in order to be a successful medical device territory manager, you got to hit every single bullet point on the job description, and you got to have, you know, 1 million years worth of sales experience in this discipline, and you got to have, you know, all those kinds of relationships. And those are great. And we have people who are in the organization who have those deep-seated relationships, and so they're very valuable. And I would also say that there are some of those intangibles that people have as salespeople that know how to sell, that might come from B2B. They can break in, and if they've got that hunger and that they're coachable enough, we can give them the tools with a good onboarding program to get them ready. And I think that paradigm shift of being able to maybe think about having a more diverse, a more inclusive sales force that doesn't necessarily have the traditional check every box, that if, as long as we've got in a culture where we'll give them the tools to succeed, we've seen that to be a really, really good way to be able to continue to be able to evaluate new talent and be able to spruce up the organization.
Right. I mean, it gives you the chance to look for people with those intangibles, right? You know, my favorite is grit. You know, they'll figure it out. And if you can give them the training, the tools, you know, they've got the will to come over the hills that might be ahead of them, right? Kind of people versus, hey, I've been in this position forever, which, hey, we'll try to find those as well. But right. I think that's opening that aperture a lot more to give you your team choices. And I thought it was interesting. You mentioned variety, right? Because you're looking different experiences. There's going to be different approaches, and that can add a lot of flavor on to the team and ideas and new ways of approach. So I think that diversity piece, by opening that up, allows you to accept more of that, right? Because you're not checking every single box that's necessary. I think it's really interesting. And guys, for those who might be joining midway through or live, I'm here with Tim Panciera, who is the VP of Sales and Marketing for the urology business at Laborie. Questions that come up, just comment below. You know, we'll answer here in about a couple minutes of what those are. So put a few comments below, and we'd love to answer those. So just put in the comments, we'll pull them in. But Tim, one of the things, a lot of people I'm sure that will be listening to this might not be leaders today, right? Mm-hmm. But they are aspiring leaders. They want to be tapped for that opportunity. And you get in big organizations, there's a lot of people. Yeah. So what are the things you've seen, or maybe it's you've been tapped, you know, that you might have done to really be noticed and given that next level, either that first leadership opportunity or an advancement? Any suggestions there?
Yeah, I think the first is to raise your hand and to make sure that everyone's aware of what your goals are. I think, and again, we as leaders can make sure that we've got that in conjunction with departments like HR to ensure that we've got that feedback and that we have good one-on-one time that really includes what is it that you, not just your performance and what you've done, but also where you're trying to go. We just did a survey across our organization, and one of the questions was, do you aspire to have people leadership in the future? And it was a resounding number. I mean, it was over 80% of the team said, yes, we do, which is, if that's a good problem to have, that's exciting to know, but I don't know that we all knew that. And so, shame on us if we're not having those conversations, but also to encourage those who have reached out to say, hey, I want to put this on your map. I have aspirations to be able to go do these things. Let the organization know. I mean, I think that that's the first step is, all right, if you want to go do this, how can we work on a game plan to get you exposed to some different skill sets or to some different projects? How can we task you with some different opportunities that will be able to give you that exposure? And back to, again, that 360-degree feedback that I think we were talking about earlier, get feedback. One of the most useful tools that I went through while in leadership was to actually go to some of the senior leaders, to be able to go to colleagues and maybe even dip into other parts of the organization cross-departmentally that I might not interact with as frequently, to understand what's my brand. That I've had very good colleagues who've talked about the brand. Well, an individual is a brand as well as a company. And I think if you get feedback that say, well, here's the good, the bad, the ugly, it helps you understand that these are the things that might be either helping or hurting or hindering my career advancement opportunity. So get that feedback. And I think that when you start to open that dialogue up with people of integrity that you trust, that will give you an honest direct report, it'll help you understand, what you can do maybe a little bit differently to continue to advance your career.
Yeah, no, that's a great suggestion. So, it's one, let people, don't assume they know what you want, right? Champion your vision and where your career aspirations are. I love the fact I've never heard about what's your personal brand and asking your colleagues, knowing how you perceive within the organization, good and also bad, right? So you could start to correct and be cognizant of that. And one thing you didn't say in this one, but I heard you say a little bit earlier is, do the job, right? It's easier, ask for those challenges to do the job, volunteer, right? For extra work, to lead something, to do something. And it's, and I know the leaders I've elevated in my past were the ones that they said, hey, I'll put the training module together, right?
Yeah.
And no one asked them to. Well, when we needed a leader, they were the ones which was like, hey, they already know how to train, right? They put the training module together, So that's an absolutely great example. So, right now I'll take a little bit of questions from the FloodGate family here. So we've got, looks like a few questions. Let's see, we've got Eric Beck giving you a little accolades here. So that next person up mentality, he loves that comment. Well said. Well, to pick that out. I didn't pick up that phrase, so that's good. You've got Jacqueline. So kind of asking a little bit about the leader you admire. So what's a leader that you admire most and why?
Sure. Well, I had the opportunity to report into or to be led by an individual, Shacey Petrovic. She's the CEO at the Insulet Corporation, Omni Technology here in Acton, Mass. She is someone who I think just from the beginning, when I was really getting into leadership, she was the one who opened up the dialogue of, hey, what are we doing well and what are we not doing well? What are the things that as an organization, are we doing this specifically well? She just encouraged this environment that was a very contagious drive to just that pursuit of excellence. And she wasn't afraid to get down to the patient level, to the territory manager level and say, are we doing this okay? And you knew the answer that you were going to say is, no, I don't think we are. But she was able to tease out that safety of, no, I think she really wants an honest, direct feedback. And so, from the beginning, I think she just was someone I believed had just incredible passion for technology, for doing things the right way, voice of customer. Also, it's great to see female leadership to be able to break, some of the molds that are out there. So I've always looked up to her. She's just someone who's, I think, really been inspirational in making sure that she represents the true integrity of what a company should do and represents the voice of the customer, and everything like the organization decides they want to do is always with their employees and with their customers in mind. So she's one of my favorites.
And incredible company making an amazing impact, So one thing I heard you say that I think is one of the most challenging things for leaders is a lot of times you might see a problem, a deficiency, something, you mentioned she knew it was a problem, but didn't just jump on him, go, hey, correct that, do that differently. That's your natural reaction, right? We got to correct it. We got to fix it. We got to get back on board. But having that patience to say, tell me about this. What's happening here? What can be improved on? Right? And allowing that to come up as a problem. I heard you say, she really genuinely wanted to know what your ideas were to fix it, not tell someone how to fix it. Right? Because I think that creates that agency within your team. I thought that was a little lesson that I picked up from what you're saying. It's incredible. And I know I struggle with it personally. I like to talk a lot, as you can tell.
Well, we're sales guys, but I think that what that did is it also opened up the environment for her. She invited me to be able to to get back to her with any time that I could maybe lean on her for any input as well. And so she's opened the door for being able to say, here's what my experience was, here's what drove me, here's what I would give you as maybe some direction or some insights on things that could help you. So it really was impactful to have the leader of an organization still at every level being open-minded to those interactions.
Awesome. Guys, any more questions, please just write a quick question on the bottom there. Looks like Brittany's got a little question. I think you answered it. I don't know if there's anything else comes up, but, people that are in that wants to be medical device and leadership, any other comments we didn't hit there? I know she had an additional insight there. I think we hit that pretty good, but anything else that you think?
The only thing I would add is, I guess, just to really think about what's driving you to want to go do it. One of my favorite things to ask when people are making that bridge into leadership is, why are you doing this? Why do you really want to do this? Be careful what you wish for, because it's fun to think about. Okay, it's a promotion, and maybe that sounds good, but really, what's driving you? And in some cases, you might actually make less money going into management than you do at a field contributor level. So I think it's just making sure that what are you genuinely wanting out of that is the first question you have to be honest with yourself about before you really start to pursue all those other things we talked about earlier.
Yeah. And one thing I talk about, potential leaders is expectation. And hey, as a leader, guess what? You've got to run about 25% harder than everybody else because you're setting the pace of the team, right? And whether you know it or not, if you're not willing to set that level of pace, and everyone's going to be a little bit behind you. So if you're not willing to go 25% harder than everybody else consistently every day,
they're
going to slow to your pace. So I think that's something as an expectation. And people are like, oh yeah, once a manager, I don't, it's the opposite, right? If you're doing it right. I mean, granted, we've seen it done wrong, and that's not the case, but if you're doing it right, that's my opinion.
It's a thankless job. You're supposed to be putting the spotlight on those who really are now earning it, and that's okay for some. But if you really like the spotlight and you like being the one to walk across the stage to get the rep of the year, then maybe think about it, because it's a thankless job. You have to work very hard behind the scenes, as you're saying, and it's all about putting the attention on what the team achieves.
Yeah, no, I agree that humility is absolutely crucial in some of the best leaders I've ever experienced and ever seen, and it was interesting. I've been exposed to some of the upper level leaders, and it felt like the more I went up, met CEOs, the more humble they actually were, than some of the other people. So Tim, I any other questions here? Let's see if anything else has popped up here. Just a couple thanks. No, just a couple thanks from our comments here. Guys, we will be checking this feed. Tim will be checking the feed. So if there's something that comes up, and let us know. Just put a comment in there, comment below. Be happy to answer it. Tim, thank you so much for spending time on this Leadership Live event and educating this medical device MedTech community by yourself, Laborie, and what you've learned in leadership. I hope some people have taken away some nuggets and will do. Thanks so much, Tim. Everyone, have a great day.
Appreciate it.